The reaction faces from the goddess is just something that's just truly magical. Like, you can make so many memes. Like, there's just so much meme potential from the reaction faces of her that I'm expecting a lot of good things in the future for a very long time. Like, usually there is a lot of anime that kind of live on for a very long time, like Konosuba. It's a good example of a series that lives on because it has such noteworthy reaction faces. And so I'm really happy that, you know, the Cautious Hero has something like this, because it does mean that the series isn't going to die and just be forgotten one day. Because with faces like what the goddess gives us, I highly doubt, you know, it's going to be the end of this series after, you know, the anime ends. So anyways, with that out of the way though, I've missed Cautious Hero. I really have. Like, it didn't air last week, but it was for a good reason, and if you were unaware of it, for instance, you were wondering why there was no episode of Cautious Hero last week, it was because of it being on break, because Japan had a typhoon come in, and obviously because of the typhoon, you know, it's more important to keep everybody safe and healthy and alive than worrying about airing a show. So, you can't really blame them for kind of delaying, you know, the Cautious Hero episode when they're more worried about the lives of their people. So, I'm not going to really, you know, fault them in any way. And I think everybody should agree to that matter, because it would be wrong if you think that we should have gotten an episode last week over them being safe. But okay, with that out of the way though, I did miss it though. And I'm glad to have it back, because it's easily one of my favorite series of this season, because it's just so enjoyable, and I do love, you know, me some good isekai. I really love it, and that's kind of what this is. And it really does add a different spin to the genre or this type of series that I really have not seen before. The only series that really kind of comes close to this in terms of just presentation with comedy, etc., is, I would say, Konosuba. But even then, the form of comedy from Konosuba is very different from the comedy that is given in Cautious Hero. So even though I'm trying to compare them, they're not really similar in a lot of ways. They're very funny, and it really gets me going all the time when I see the MC, our hero, constantly just showing how unhinged he really is, which, by the way, let's talk about that. So, anyone else get very sad or felt pity for the god that was training Seiya? Like, anyone got emotional? Like, that poor dude literally thought he was the best. He was called as, like, the divine sword or divine blade or whatever, and by the end of it, halfway in the middle of the episode, he was literally regretting his very existence, and he just wanted to sit down and just become a part of the background. He did not care to be there anymore. I honestly just felt so sorry for the dude, and I love the gradual buildup of it. It's a very simplistic moment of the episode, and I know some might not care too much about it since half of the episode kind of did focus on it, but I thought it was just really enjoyable to see the gradual buildup of just Seiya's training and what kind of effect it really has on people that are around him, because at this point in time, before we saw this episode, we only saw Seiya, like, doing his workout by himself, and the goddess walking in, seeing him train a little bit, or, you know, him walking out, you know, and talking to her. We didn't really ever get to see anyone interact with him, what he was truly doing by himself. And just seeing the guy that was training with Seiya just straight up get so broken, I was just chuckling to myself, because I'm like, holy crap, this man's training is just absolutely on a whole other level. And everybody that comes in contact with him as a character pretty much all come to an agreement that he is just messed up. He's mad. He's insane. He's unhinged. And, like, I really think the one moment that really just summarizes it all, to really show just what Seiya was doing to the man, was when the man was laying on the ground and Seiya's just like boom, 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 just punching him constantly, and you don't even hear the dude even crying, he's not even saying anything, and you see the goddess like, what is this? What are you doing to him? And, you know, he's like, oh, this is training, and then he just looks at her and he's just like, he's all quiet, and he's like, he's not even saying anything. It's really messed up, and I think that perfectly summarizes just how brutal Seiya was to the dude. And I wonder if that character will ever, you know, reappear, if it is his one-time appearance or not, because it does make me wonder. wonder, which, by the way, that's something I want to get into. So, Seiya, his training within this episode, despite the funniness of it, he trained with a god, which is no simple feat. He basically trained with a dude that was once human, that was reincarnated kind of as a god. And what is stated within this episode is that the dude is not allowed to use his full power, because since he is a god, he's not allowed to use his power against a human. It's just forbidden. And it's not really clarified at all within this episode if Seiya ever really surpassed his level as a god or just as a human. I mean, obviously as a human, but we really don't know if he surpassed him as a god. It was never really clarified whatsoever, which really does have me wondering about that, overall mentioning within this episode, because you'd think a guy that got mentally broke down and messed up like he did within this episode, regardless of rules, he would have struck back against Seiya to defend himself with all his might as a god, but he didn't do that, so it does make me wonder exactly what are these restrictions on these gods, but also, did the man actually truly get surpassed completely or not? Now, the funny point here is that Seiya did prove that he got incredibly strong in just like a few days, like 3 to 4 days. He got insanely strong, and it's ridiculous. According to what he said within this episode, is that he wouldn't be, I guess, done with training with the god if he wasn't 100 times stronger than him, which I think really says a lot. That pretty much means that Seiya most likely is 100 times stronger than he was now, which is just, kind of scary. It's very scary because we already knew how ridiculously broken he was in the previous episode, but now seeing this episode, you're like, I wonder what he's like now. Which, by the way, his opponents he's facing, I highly doubt are really going to give him any type of challenge, but there is potential that because of how different this world is, maybe the enemies he's facing is also very cautious, and he needs to be cautious to face them. I can see definitely a perfect blend and balance between it, but let's get into the enemies he's facing. So, the enemies that Seiya is going to have to face faced in this episode and the upcoming episode, he's going to be facing undead. He's going to be facing 10,000 undead soldiers, and I'm assuming that is not counting probably the main baddie that's behind the scenes that's probably going to be leading the charge, one of the Heavenly Kings. So Seiya has his work cut out for him, especially after seeing how he's interacted with every opponent he's fought thus far within the story. Because think about it. I mean, his first introduction to a slime, he literally sat there for like hours just beating that slime into a pulp, which pretty much died on the first hit, and it was overkill. So, I can't imagine just how crazy overkill it's going to be for Seiya against a 10,000 undead army, because imagine what he just does for one, what he did in this episode with just one. What do you think he's going to do to 10,000 of them? Like, he most likely has some form of ability that's just so ridiculous and overkill that can wipe out all of them out at once, but he's going to keep using it over and over and something even stronger to be able to destroy it. Which, by the way, I like how the goddess reacted to what he did within this episode. He's like, okay, time for me to make sure it's truly finished off since he's undead. And she quickly just didn't say anything. She just grabbed the kids, grabbed the nun, and just ran outside of the building, and the building just exploded. It's hilarious. It was pretty freaking hilarious just how quick it was, and she's just gotten used to how insane he really is. Which, by the way, speaking of how funny it is, the man poured holy water on the priest, which, okay, I'll give him that. I mean, in terms of cliches and stuff, that does make sense, that the old man and all that being there was definitely, a zombie. I could definitely see it. That makes sense, okay? But him pouring the holy water on the kids and also pouring it on the goddess definitely took me by surprise, but then it popped up in my mind once that was done is this also going to become something reoccurring? That he's going to start carrying around a lot of holy water, not for the undead, but just to pour on people, every person he meets now within the story. That would be freaking hilarious if he does that. Like, he just carries bottles of holy water on him, he's just like, just pours it on random people that he passes by. I would die. I would legitimately die if that happens. I honestly, I kind of want to see it. And also, by the way, I do think it's hilarious, too, when he goes to the shopkeeper, and obviously when you over-prepare for things, I talked about this in the first episode, he tries to prepare once again, and he wants to buy his entire stock of, holy water, and the man obviously doesn't have that much in stock like he wanted, so he couldn't really offer it, and then he's like, order it then, and he's like, what? Why should I order it? And, it's war times and all that, and it's hilarious, just how the shopkeeper's like, you can't carry all this, you can't do this because it's unfeasible, but then, you know, he still won it in the first place. I, for a second, thought that, you know, Seiya was gonna tell the goddess to open up some form of pocket dimension to hold all the, you know, supplies and stuff where he didn't need to actually carry it around to kind of negate what the shopkeeper said. But yeah, there's a lot of funny moments and good moments throughout this episode, and I'm pretty impressed with, you know, Cautious Hero. I do think that it continues to prove its worth as a show, and that it's definitely a contender for one of the best series of this anime season, and easily one of the most enjoyable isekai series I think of this year. I really do. I think it's a really good isekai. We've really had a good year for these type of series. I mean, we've had, like, you know, in recent memory, we've had, like, Slime, we've had, you know, The Rising of the Shield Hero, and regardless of how you feel about these individual series, if you like them or not, there have been some very unique ones recently, and I'm really glad to see that even though this genre is very oversaturated in a lot of ways, there's still so many unique things that you can still get out of it, and that's kind of what, you know, I'm really appreciating this series for. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, you know, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like, and if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below, and with that, Chibi out.